What's going on, everybody, and welcome back into Heated Shenanigans Podcast, the newest installment for the Superstar Spotlight Series. And boy, do we have a big guest for today's episode for this next installment. Joining me today is honestly one of the most renowned professional wrestlers on the independent circuit. He has been literally everywhere. GCW, House of Heat Pro Wrestling. He's been on WWE for a stint, NXT, AEW. Of course, I'm talking about the Iron Demon, Shane Mercer. Shane, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. Shane, you've been in the business a lot longer than what people actually seem to have in their mind that you've been in the business.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
How long have you been in?
This February will be 18 years.
18?
Yep, this February.
God, I knew you'd been around a little bit, but I didn't think you'd been 18 years.
Yep, as soon as I was able to jump into this, I did. That's the first thing I did.
Now, again, you have one of the best looks in all of independent wrestling, and I know you get it from every promoter, people in the back. Have you always been this genetically gifted?
Well, when I first started out wrestling, I was more of a high flyer. That was my thing. You still might see me every now and then pull out some high flying stuff here and there or whatever, and people will be like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you can do it." But that's what I used to do when I first started. I was just more of a high flyer and everything because one of my favorites growing up, I always loved RVD and the stuff like that growing up, and try to mimic that style to what I did with my buddies on the trampoline and whatnot. And I was a power lifter in high school, and I weighed like probably 140 pounds. I knew I needed to gain weight, so I just started hitting the gym, and that was it. I just hit it with no real routine. I just kind of hit it until everything to failure and tried to lift as heavy as I could, gain some weight with it, and always was able to implement my, flips and stuff along with it. And that never really left my side at all. Just as I got stronger, I kept that and added more stuff to it.
So you have one of the most impressive finishing moves I've personally ever seen, moonsault and battery. And for those of you who have not seen it, do yourself a favor, go check it out. There's multiple clips on YouTube of Shane doing it. When did you realize this was something that you could do? And did you have any pushback from others that were asked to take this move?
Oh, when I first started in professional wrestling, yeah, because back then, you got to think 18 years ago, coming on now, wrestling was a little bit, well, I don't say a whole lot different, but it was. It's like we was in a transitional period because that was what before the boom of social media. Social media was still there, but you had like MySpace and stuff like that. So the transition going from that to now, it was like more slower paced, more Memphis style stuff, which nothing against that and everything, but a lot of times you don't see a lot of those guys doing that kind of stuff. So whenever I get in the ring with a lot of these guys, of course, they don't see that stuff everywhere. It just sounds crazy. And as time went on, and the more crazier stuff you've seen out there, the more people became more comfortable with it. But a lot of the old time veterans and stuff, they're just didn't want to take it or scared or crazy with it. But I also think it had to attribute to with the longer I was in the business and the more I did the move and nobody got seriously messed up, they understood like, okay, this is safer than it is going to end up being to me overall. And yeah, there's definitely some pushback when I first started with it, for sure.
So you've hit that on some pretty sizable men. Calvin Tankman, I believe you've hit that on too.
Yeah, I've hit it on Calvin Tankman, Congo Kong, Zodiac. There's a bunch of guys from around the area I've hit it on. The biggest one is probably Congo Kong, though.
I said that one I had seen in the highlight video that you have on YouTube. Now, being in the business 18 years, I mean, you've seen a lot, done a lot. What would you say is one lesson that you learned on the independent scene or even in your career that you didn't expect to learn, and how did it change your career afterwards?
Just the ability to be able to adapt and grow. When you first start wrestling, you think, oh man, my athletic ability and how good you are in the ring is what matters. No, it don't really matter. You can see a lot of guys who honestly are not that great at all become huge stars because of their charisma and the way they carry themselves and the way who they know in the business and such. And a lot of that stuff does matter a lot. You got to make sure you get your connections. You got to make sure you talk to the right people. You got to make sure you build up a security with people and have a network going around, and a lot of that matters along with nowadays your online presence. You have to have all of that together, and it's almost like the athletic ability needs to be there, of course, because if you match somebody else who has all these other notches, then it'll come down to that, and that's what matters. But you got to make sure you have those things first in order to get to where you need to be. But when you first start, you think, oh, I'm just going to go in here and try my hardest and have the best matches. Sounds great. It'd be awesome if it was that way, but it's not.
No, there's a few more layers to it than that.
Yeah.
Now, social media is so huge in professional wrestling and as well as our everyday life. And recently, WWE announced the WWE ID system. I was, as a person that's on the upper echelon of the independent scene, what are your thoughts on this? Like, how do you feel about having this type of a pathway and opportunity opened up for you?
I'm a little bit older with it, so I think about the times going back to when I first started. It was kind of already been being done, but not just presented out there in the way as it is nowadays on social media. I don't really see it as much of a difference from back in the day, because I'm a little bit older. Whenever it comes to seeing this stuff, you got to think 18 years been in the business. I've seen a lot of it now, and back then it was just looked at differently, but not showcased as frequently as it is nowadays. Like, it's called WWE ID. Of course, it got more of a name and a format on it now. But back then, you had promotions like Heartland Wrestling Association, had like Moxley and people like that in it. You had OVW, of course, which isn't as proliferate as back then, but you still had it as a feeder system. You had these feeder promotions. You even had like Insanity Pro Wrestling in Indiana sometimes would feed people to them. Then you had let me think here, Universal Championship Wrestling out of I think it was like California, had John Cena, Samoa Joe. So there's always been promotions that's been kind of looked at, and I think we all kind of knew places like RCW with Booker T's promotion, the Black and the Brave promotion with Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes. I think we all kind of already knew, like, hey, they're going to get a little bit more looks than others just because of who they represent. But now it's official, coming out and saying it, so to speak.
And another thing on the WWE ID thing, it's some fashion it has always been around, but
Yeah.
when it comes to the impact that it's going to have on independent wrestling, do you think that the impact is going to be as big as what people are making it out to be, or just maybe a little bit of a sticker shock overreaction going on right now?
I don't think it will be as big as it's made out to be, because it will be uh, the same thing as back then. They're going to choose and pick who they want. I mean, flat out. It don't mean everybody's going to get an opportunity. There's not enough room for everybody. There's not enough TV for everybody. And then you also are going to have the other college athletes on the other program, the Olympic athletes, that's just coming straight in that never had nothing to do with wrestling. It does give a glimmer of hope, because with me being an independent wrestler myself, over the years, sometimes it would kind of be weird and hard, because it almost seems like if you want to make it and get signed to like WWE or somewhere, for instance, you need to not be a wrestler. You need to be a college basketball or football athlete, which is so backwards to me, but that's how it seemed to be. But I guess I understand it too, because they don't want to deal with a lot of the mishaps and indie-rific stuff you see that they learn, bad habits and such. So I kind of get both sides of it, looking at it from a business aspect. But it gives a glimmer of hope to a lot of independent talents out there to look forward to something to strive for.
Yeah, and something else that seems to get a lot of flack on independent wrestling, deathmatch wrestling. It's something that I feel you either are a fan of it or you want nothing to do with it. You've done a few death matches throughout your time in wrestling. What are your thoughts on it, and how did you start to get into that genre of independent wrestling?
I've always been able to do that kind of stuff. I just never did want to be used vampiric, if I just made up a word there. I didn't want somebody to feed off of me and my body and my blood and just use me in a death match for no reason. I'm not a fan of just random death matches for no reason. I like it whenever it's built up, it's in a tournament. I had a kind of like a goal list of stuff I wanted to accomplish in deathmatch wrestling. There was a lot of names I wanted to face. There's a lot of tournaments I wanted to be in. I've been in death matches out of the country now, multiple countries actually, played on different continents. I faced talent in Japan and stuff. I faced talent in Mexico, faced talent in Canada. I faced some of the tops here in the U.S., but there's still a little bit left, but not a whole lot left of stuff I was wanting to mark off. And to start it all off, I was just wanting to show that I'm a hybrid athlete. I'm able to do all of it. Most of the so-called, referenced body guys, you won't see doing this because they don't want to scar their body up. I wanted to show I can do any and all of it in every style.
We'll say, and I've seen the pictures. Like there's the one that I think it went viral of you just completely covered in blood and it just all on the jeans. And, it's a very unique and attention getting image when you see it, and it's got a captivating audience for those that enjoy that style of professional wrestling. I guess what do you feel about the pushback from the rest of the community that maybe they don't understand it, or they're too old school and just feel it doesn't have a place in independent wrestling or wrestling in general?
The people that are going to argue against it, there's never anything to convince them. It's almost like talking about politics, Once they side on one side, they're going to defend it to no end, no matter what. There's not a lot of open-mindedness on it if you're against it. It's just a way of being brought into the business. If you love Memphis wrestling, you love old school stuff, more than likely you're going to hear them hating on the modern age wrestling stuff. And then you're going to see some people that love the comedy grenade drop spots in the ring, stuff like that. And you got the blood fetish people that just love weapons and hardcore style wrestling. It just really depends on what your flavor is. Wrestling is, like a lot of people refer to, as artistic. So it just depends on what you're into and what you like.
It's a pretty good way to put it. Now, you mentioned you checked off things off of a bucket list for your career. What are some things that are still left on that list?
Obviously, number one would be get signed and do that and showcase that I can still perform on that level with some of the best in the world. I've gotten to the point now to where I feel like probably half the people you see on TV I've wrestled or been in a locker room with, they're my peers. It's not me. Like when you grow up, you see a lot of, when I first started, I seen all these wrestlers and Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, some of the best in the world. And a lot of these guys are on the way out the door, sadly enough now. So a lot of times now when I see people, they're more my peers than they are people that I've looked up to and everything. So I've been in a locker room with them, and I want to showcase that I'm capable of doing this no matter what style we're at, where we can go. I've been down to do this for years. It's just getting the right formula, recipe, I guess, right people to talk to, whatever you want to put in front of me to do it.
Well, one of the final questions here that we'll ask, what do you feel are some attributes that you bring to a company or a locker room if you were to be brought in anywhere on the scene?
I feel like I can always kind of stand out when need be to be a leader. I feel like I can stand up, help people whenever they need time in the ring, whenever they need coachability, whenever they need some type of preference for talking about something. I try to post motivational stuff every week anyway, or post something from the gym or something like that. I've always been like that. And like I said, I'm a hybrid. I can work with anybody, any style, anywhere, and try to make that work. I'm usually pretty open-minded about stuff. So you bring me there, it don't matter where. I feel like I can make something work and try to have a badass match too while I'm there.
Well, in closing here, Shane, do you have any upcoming appearances, or do you have any social media that you would like to give a little bit of attention to?
You can catch me on Instagram, Shane Mercer. You can catch me on X/Twitter at The Iron Demon. Look me up on Facebook. Again, Shane Mercer. You can check out my YouTube. Look up Shane Mercer on there. You'll find me uploading usually a full match every month on there, weightlifting, something else random. You can check out most of my stuff. Got a Patreon. You can check me out on there as well. And I'll be at GCW next week on their tour going from Kentucky and St. Louis. So you can check me out there as well. And then you'll see me at the end of the month, of course, at House of Heat.
Absolutely. And guys, again, I want to thank my guest today, Shane, for taking time from his very busy schedule to join us for today's Superstar Spotlight. And if I may, in closing, guys, promoters out there, anybody looking to add something special to your roster, I would urge you to look no further than Shane Mercer, because, again, I've had the pleasure of working with Shane for a few months now. Absolute great leader, as he said, in the locker room, willing to give anybody the shirt off of his back to make the company better, the promotion better. And truly, if you're not booking Shane Mercer in 2024, 2025, you are doing a true disservice to your company.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome, Shane. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Heated Shenanigans Podcast, Superstar Spotlight Edition, guys. We will see you back here on the next episode. Everybody out there, take care.